In part two of our examination of R.E. Hobart on compatibilism, we're going to look at three different criticisms or problems with the view. And the first one has to do with a dilemma. And here's the challenge. We need to consider his view. So he describes these deterministic connections. So we have wish, or as I think he would prefer, probably desire, seems to make more sense there. Desire causally determines one's will, which in turn causally determines the action that you take. And of course, his view that this causal determination is perfectly consistent with freedom. The action comes from you. You are acting freely. Now, here's the question that prompts the dilemma. Is the desire itself causally determined? If yes, then it seems there is no ability to do otherwise, as he claimed that we have. Look, how could you do otherwise if your desire is determined and it determines your will, which it determines your action? This is one causal chain that cannot go any other direction if these causal connections are deterministic, which he claims they are. And so that's the problem if you answer yes to the question. If you answer no to the question, well, now you have the problem that he claimed the libertarian faces. His criticisms of libertarianism are now going to be effective against his own view. If these are not causally determined actions, then they are rootless or sourceless, to use his term. They are indeterministic, and that's not freedom, according to his view. So you have to say something about the desire itself that initiates this process. If it is determined, there really isn't any ability to do otherwise. If it's not determined, well, his own criticisms of libertarianism would apply to his own view. All right, a second problem now has to do with causation itself and his view of causation. So for Hobart, causation always implies that there is a deterministic process going on. That's his view of causation. But here's another challenge in the form of a question. Could there be causation without this deterministic connection? And here I'm going to borrow from G.E.M. Anscombe, and she actually borrows from Feynman on an example with a bomb. Now, of course, I'm not going to worry about their particular details, but suppose not you, but a terrorist group sets a bomb up that's going to detonate if a Geiger counter senses radiation above a certain level. And then you place some radon, say, that has a half-life of about half a week, 3.8 days, near the Geiger counter, and then you set the bomb to go off if there's a certain level reached by this time of a game. Say you're putting it at a stadium. And if it doesn't go off, well, that's just the chance of the indeterministic process of radioactive decay. If it does go off, of course, that's also due to an indeterministic process of radioactive decay. But if it goes off, do we say the terrorists did not cause the bombing? Of course they did. That is an action that was fulfilled with the bomb going off. And of course, that was ultimately their responsibility because they're the ones that set it up. So you can have causation and you can have responsibility without determinism. Other examples that have been provided, people have talked about a general giving a certain order at a key point in a battle. It may or may not succeed. It's indeterminate. If it succeeds, the general gets credit. Or a coach calling a certain play at the last minute of a game to win the game. And if it succeeds, the coach deserves credit for the play being called. If not, of course not. But it's indeterministic whether or not the play will work. So it seems like there are common and clear examples of causation without determinism, which then, of course, undermines one of his primary assumptions for his view. A third problem is a more general problem with compatibilism. So I've described this when I talked about criticisms of Walter Stace and other compatibilists. So we have arguments for incompatibilism, including, for example, the consequence argument. Very roughly, the consequent argument says that if my actions are causally determined, well, if determinism is true as a whole, they're causally determined by the past and the laws of nature. That's what causally determines my actions. Of course, I have no control over the past or the laws of nature, and if I don't have any control over the things that cause my actions, then I don't have any control over my actions. And if I don't have any control over my actions, then I am not free in acting, nor would I be morally responsible for acting. That argument is developed in a separate video.